Lovely. Cool. So I talked about Zava Web in terms of our website, and I mentioned the app, and the app is what we're going to be talking about today. So yes, we've launched a new app in Germany to provide online consultations with doctors, and this really allows us to help more users with more broad health needs rather than specific needs. This is the app in the App Store. The vision here for the app was really that you can get healthcare whenever you need it. And that we envision a world, with everyone who has access to the internet, however shaky some days, can get the high quality care when and wherever they need it in the most efficient, effective and affordable way. So when I joined Zava, I was relatively close to the team that were working on creating this app and have remained so. Yeah, it's something I'm very familiar with and was involved with throughout the kind of process of building the experience. I'm going to jump out of full screen now, and I'm just going to show you a live demo. It's not live. There's enough live going on at the moment, but it's just a recording I did a couple of days ago of me actually using the app. So I'm just going to do this. Cool. So I'll just share this video. I'll quickly run through it, and it just shows how an existing Zava patient can basically download the app, have it on their phone, and I'll walk you through how the first steps of the experience to book an event. And then I'll crack into the three, key things we did focusing on when we built this experience. So this is me and my phone. This is our homepage. I know it's all in German. My German's still not that great. So this is the homepage where the user will, or the patient will come to first. And through a lot of user testing and talking to users, it was apparent that they needed information up front. What is this? How much is it going to cost? Who are your doctors? And so what you're seeing here is cards of information that just show that core information really quickly and concise. So once, I'll just quickly pause here. Once I've jumped into the booking tab down the bottom, I can basically choose if I want a video call or a phone call. Some patients basically said, when I'm really sick, I don't actually want to see the doctor in terms of, if I've got the flu, then I look awful, which is, was really interesting to understand. So I can choose if I want a phone call or a video call. And then I go through to booking a time, choosing a date, and eventually selecting a doctor. So this is just me basically playing around the other night so I could book an appointment. It's important to add that on that first booking page, we've made it clear like this isn't an emergency app. It is, to see a GP. If it's an emergency, please, call the relevant numbers. So I've jumped in here, and once you've selected the time you want, you can then see the doctor. So if there's multiple doctors available, you can select, I might want a male doctor, I might want a female doctor, I might want a doctor with specialist skills. And so you can basically select who you want, dependent on when they're free at that time. In the future, you'll be able to, sort by doctors and choose one that's kind of right for you. So I've chosen Stephanie as my doctor after I've had a good stalk of her profile. I've come into the booking confirmation page, and I'm basically going through the confirmation process. I'll talk a little bit more about the doctor profile later in the talk, but and that's on the video. Now I'm all done. I can add it to my calendar and so on. But the doctor profile was really interesting because through user testing, people just really wanted in-depth interviews. We found that people just wanted to be able to Google their doctor. They wanted to be able to look them up on LinkedIn and just get a sense of who they are, what they look like, their history and experience. And so it might not seem like a big feature, we'll put a profile into the doctor, but as soon as we validated it with users, it just kind of reassured them that it wasn't a robot, it was a real human being. So that was a super, super quick live demo. I just wanted to show you how easy it is to just make a booking. And then from there, you would obviously have your consultation with the doctor, and then you've got the post-consultation experience, right? So I've got my diagnosis, you can send prescriptions, I can then go and pick it up from pharmacy near me in Germany, or I can get it delivered. So that is, I'll just go back to full noise. That is yeah, that's just a quick run through of the app. Hopefully that gives you a bit of insight. Now I'm going to break it down a little bit into kind of 3 big areas, which I'm sure we're all familiar with, especially from a UX perspective. 3 things that we really focused on when building the experience, and some kind of methods and tools that we used to make sure that we were, although, we were really trying to connect the patients to those doctors. And I've also included some learnings in each part. So this may seem really obvious. When I was writing it, I was like, oh, this is really obvious. But it's such a massive piece of the puzzle, right? Like, get close to your users and make your solutions desirable and feasible. So spending time upfront and understanding your users, so in our case, people in Germany with statutory insurance, really looking to understand what they value, what they wanted, their outcomes, what concerns them about online healthcare, all those kind of like meaty areas, was really key that we could kind of understand those. So we did it through, obviously, user research, so a lot of discovery, a lot of sprints, and then we did it through user testing, so just low fidelity prototypes, getting them in front of our users and starting to build up that constant communication. Top tip, very key here to get the cross-functional team involved in that whole process. I'll talk about that a little bit later, but it wasn't just the UX team running interviews and talking to users. We made it really easy for people to join, moderated interviews virtually, so they could actually see what we were seeing as well. So through that user research, you can obviously understand your users' needs, their motivations, so why do they actually want to use your service, and some barriers that might be stopping them to use your service. The goal here is just to be really clear on what problems you are helping them solve. Once you're clear on who you're designing for and what outcomes they want to achieve, you can then make far more informed design decisions. But doing this up front makes basically the journey after it a lot easier. Also makes your solutions a lot more relevant and meaningful, which is something the team were really, really, hard on ourselves, making sure that we were constantly doing that. So we ran over 100, I don't know the exact number, but it was over 100 moderated interviews. We had a UX researcher, we had a UX designer, a UI designer. We shared the load. We had a product owner who could, fluent German speaker who could help out. But the whole mission was to talk to users frequently so that we could, like I've said, validate our assumptions with them, run in-depth interviews, we could create feedback loops. So if we tested with someone once, we could then ping them a link to, our newest prototype. But the key was really understanding them and also starting to build empathy for them so that when you move through the design process, you're not just referring to our users. You're actually starting to put some content behind it. Okay, had to put this in. This is like still my favorite quote ever from user testing. Like we all know, what people say isn't necessarily what they do. We were early on in the iteration phase and someone said, oh, no, don't trust the doctor in the picture. He isn't wearing a stethoscope. And it's just hilarious because, valid, right? That's what we kind of associate with doctors is stethoscope. But in the online context, it was interesting as to what would build trust with our patients. So some things we found out. These are only 3. We found a lot of information out, and it evolved as we dug a little bit deeper. But all of the findings from a lot of the testing was that users want trust, they want connection, and they want information. So I mentioned the information about your online doctor. Who are they? What do they look like? What's their skills? Trust being I want empathy from my doctor. I want someone who takes the time to listen to me, who almost knows me, so having started to build up that relationship. And also I want to feel a connection with them. So these are just 3 elements that we tried to, or aspects, let's call them, that we tried to include throughout the process. And just making sure that we're looping back to make, all decisions meaningful. I just want to touch on this really quickly. So I showed it in the demo in terms of these are literally our doctors. So there's 4, I think these are all in Hamburg at the moment. But in terms of validating with the users, with your audience, and when I say that, I do mean doctors as well, you start to create legitimacy, right? So trust is a huge thing for people in online healthcare space. And so I think the doctor profile is a really good example of this. So when we created the feature, it was based on user research, is something that was super important. And so it was really key for us to quickly iterate, and so to build out this feature and then test it. And then also test it with doctors to make sure that what we were communicating to build reassurance with users made them feel at ease as well, and started to create that conversation before the consultation has actually happened. The patient and the doctor almost have an understanding of each other. But I think that creating that legitimacy and will really help build trust through reassuring both sides, both parts of the user group. Cool. So first thing was users. Second thing I would like to just share, again, it might seem really straightforward. This is probably one of my favorite activities we did right at the start of the process last year, where we shaped our user journey as a team, first point. Second point, by future casting. So what do I mean by future casting? We basically outlined two journeys, right? So we went, what is the future of healthcare in an online world in, I don't know, I think we said 15, 20 years. We wanted to say 50, but we thought it would be realistic. So we started with, what does it look like? Map it out. And then we went, okay, what's our current journey in an offline physical world? How do I actually go and see a doctor right now? Map that out. And align them. So you've kind of got current, and we got future and current. Thinking about the future first and understanding both journeys helped us to really identify the gaps between the two, right? And so you can start to almost bridge them. You can see opportunities. You can see problems that you want to solve. You can see areas where it's so obvious where you can increase efficiency or bring more of a digital aspect or make things far more convenient. And then you can jump into really understanding and defining each one of those opportunities. So like I said, aligning them, kind of going future and current, offline, online, finding pieces between was really, really helpful. Overall, it allowed us to incorporate the best of each journey. There are some parts that are absolutely fine with, our current state, and there are some parts that we dream about in the future. It also helped us to really mimic some of the offline common practice in this kind of online future world, linking back to my first point, which could help us create that legitimacy and then start to build trust. And also really quickly incorporate just basic fixes that technology can bring us. So yeah, it really ensured that we could include familiarity, at least aspects of it, throughout the user experience. If I think about how you go to a GP now and you're a new patient, so when I moved over from New Zealand, and you have to register and bring your documents, and they want to know everything about you. It's like, if you think about that in the online, like what we're all used to, what's your email, what's your password, how can you start to bridge the gap between that current state of physical offline space and then the online world? And what does that look like if you're bringing pieces that are recognizable, that feel natural and familiar to people? What does it look like when you start to mash them together? Enhance both fields. So this is a photo of our mapping activity. So yeah, this is the early stages. Big, go back to basics. Brown butcher paper up on the wall, the whole team around us. Just basically mapping out, okay, we've done future and current, now we want the middle. Now we want our experience, what does it look like? Really key here, doing it as a team allowed us to get clear on the journey we wanted to create. Sometimes you can feel like you know every detail of it, and then when you're trying to explain a problem or come up with an idea, it's hard to communicate all that information. But leveling out the team, doing this as a collaborative activity, it enabled us to have really robust discussions. There was different disciplines involved, so you could come at it from different perspectives. We could use it in ideation sessions to kind of pinpoint the area we're focusing on. And then also you can quickly kind of identify back-end, third-party, other areas of the businesses that need to be involved. So ultimately, this hideous butcher paper became our roadmap. It became our source of truth, a living document that evolved as we just referenced it constantly. Eventually, we put it into digital format, something like this, and it became a really, really useful tool, but it helped us do a couple of things, right? So because it was a living, evolving, constantly referenced document, you were always talking about the user journey, you're always talking about the patient and the doctor and the people involved. So it helped you actually center around human beings. The second thing was that it helped you prioritize your work really quickly to line up, new opportunities, set horizons of what, we were MVP world, so what is non-negotiable and what's kind of coming in a few months. And then also made communication really easy. There wasn't, any confusion because we could just point to the map and have a conversation about it. So very, very useful tool. I've talked about this point a couple of times, but I wanted to stress it as my final kind of thing that we did was really just being conscious about breaking conventional ways of working. So really collaborating with clinical in this setting. So obviously our doctors were in-house, which made it a little bit easier. But because we were working with in the German space and context, we had our team in Germany joining us virtually, the clinical team over there as well. But the processes that we utilised and our ways of working were always cross-functional, collaborative, and iterative. So by cross-functional, like actually not just UX and engineering and product, it was as many functions as we needed. And it really ensured that, like I've said, what we were creating was relevant and viable and feasible. And also, I always think about this, how can you create a product for doctors to use if you don't actually involve them in the process? And so having them involved, it streamlines so much. And at the start, it was a different way of doing things, but obviously on reflection, it's just really kind of going, let's just break the conventions of what we should do. So the team was actually called Unicorn, long story, but unicorns are basically magical. So the team Unicorn was a fully multidisciplinary team, and it was created based on the work that needed to happen, but the skills that needed the skills we needed to achieve the goal we wanted to get to, right? And so, like I said, heaps of disciplines involved. There are only a few, but product, user research, design, engineering, testing, content, so vital, especially when speaking in another language. Marketing, especially in the lead up to kind of launch, etc. And of course, clinical. So in the cross-functional team, there were representatives from each of those areas. And also, we're working in an agile Kanban way. And so it was easy to quickly share progress, to run sprints, to have everyone on the same page, and also involve stakeholders early enough so that they could kind of get up to speed. It also allowed us to setting up this kind of fully cross-functional team. We could run co-design sessions with doctors. We could include the wider business. That really helped us get on the same page. This is their world, This is what they do. This is their, what they're really skilled in. And so it helped us get on the same page and identify what wouldn't work, what can save time. Sometimes I'm sure they're a bit scared about our blue sky thinking and our crazy ideas, but they were there to really just share their perspectives and make sure that we're all talking the same language. So running co-design sessions with them was vital, but also involving the whole team. I've mentioned this right at the start, like getting people to attend user testing sessions. But for maximum buy-in to what we were trying to do, we needed to include the whole cross-functional team. So this was the end of a co-design session, and I think we're dot voting and putting some notes on really high-level sketches. But we would also do this through those user testing days. So every Wednesday, that was our user testing day, and we would basically open it up for the team to jump into the live call and hear the kind of moderated test going on. They could see not necessarily the user, but they could see the human being holding the phone and kind of going through the process. And we found that especially if engineers were involved in the process and they could see the interaction straight up, it made their decisions much easier and their buy-in so much bigger as we were going through the process. And then what we would do is once we'd kind of analyze the findings of that user research, we would then share them around the business and invite a conversation with our stakeholders. So in summary, and I've raced through that, can't believe it's 10:30, but in summary, when connecting or really trying to find that link between patients, doctors, patients, anything that you create and that you build must be relevant and meaningful to both of those parties. And to do this, I recommend doing 3 things: involving and understanding your users up front. All of them, all internal, external users involved, so not just patients. There's you know, having everyone and understanding clearly their perspectives will help you. Know their context and start to build trust within that relationship. Get really clear on your user journey map. Sounds basic, but if you start to unpack every single step and every phase and start to bridge that gap between future and current, your experience will be far more engaging, familiar, and involve a lot more perspectives. And then lastly, collaboration with clinical. Not only is collaboration just amazing anyway, but really making sure that you're setting your team up to collaborate in a way that involves all the functions needed. Cool. And that's me. Thank you so much for having me. I feel absolutely privileged to be invited and talking in this space. Yeah, I think we're going into
questions for you. But one of the questions that just came in is how did you go about recruiting positions for these research sessions, and any tips around this?
You totally broke out. I think you said, how do you recruit physicians?
Yeah, it was me, Melissa. I wanted to know if you had any tips around recruiting physicians for these feedback sessions and these kind of involving them in these kind of design sprint kind of sessions.
Yes. Do you mean specifically for doctors or anyone?
No, specifically for doctors.
Well, I guess we had an advantage, right, because our doctors work in the same building as us, so we would schedule half-day co-design sessions and invite them along, send a brief, and try and get them for a couple of hours to help us out.
Nice.
So it's really, I think it's, if I can give you a tip, and what I've learned, they're really busy people. The doctors are, you know, it's so in such high demand, and they're so busy. And so I think just trying to maximize their the value of their time that you are spending with them. So as much preparation as you can do before you invite them in to contribute and to help you to do things in different ways. So if I wanted to validate a flow that we'd put together in a wireframe, you know, journey, I would send it to them and say, hey, you've got 10 minutes that you can just add some notes. So just trying to be a little bit creative around what the meeting looks like, what you're asking them to do, really clear on the task, that kind of stuff.
All right. Thanks.
Okay, super. Thanks for that.